Hey guys, welcome back. This is Lanshaw for Christ, and this is day 9 of the 21 days of prayer and fasting. If this is your first time joining us, you can see on the screen a link to bellevue.org/prayer. And Bellevue Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee put out this guide of how we could pray as Christians over a 21-day period leading up to the election. So this is day 9, and each day there's a suggested topic that you could pray over and a Bible verse. We're also encouraged to pray and fast. Fasting, giving up food, giving up something else that's important to you over this time frame, and replacing that time with that activity, whether it's eating, in my case, playing video games or what have you, replacing that with prayer and reading the Bible and just seeking God's will and His wisdom. So for today, the verse or the suggested topic is: pray that political candidates and leaders will take a bold stand for righteousness, even when it is not popular. Taking positions from the Bible in today's world is not popular, whether it's your stance on abortion, your stance on marriage, your stance on prayer in school, and what have you. We could go through the list, right? The marriages being attacked, the biblical values of sexuality, male, female, transgender, all those things are under attack. And if you take a Christian point of view or an opinion, you're labeled, right? We're labeled as bigots. We're labeled as people who are tied to some old tradition. We're labeled as people who can't think. We're not woke, I guess, maybe a more common term. So that's going to be a bold stance and a bold thing to pray for these candidates. And these prayers are not just for Trump and Biden and the presidential election. It could be for your local city elections, your state, county, all the way up to the president. It all applies. The Bible verse for today's prayer and fasting is Isaiah 7:9. And it says, "If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all." So anytime that I read, I want to understand the context of kind of what's going on with that verse. So the verse itself seems self-explanatory. It's God telling us to stand firm in our faith. Don't compromise with it, because if you do, you haven't stood at all. But to reinforce that, I want to kind of go back and look at what's happening in book 7, or even chapter 6 of Isaiah. If we look at 6 first, that's when Isaiah was called and commissioned, and where God asked, "Who will I send?" And Isaiah answered, "Send me, God, send me." Well, one of the first places that God sends Isaiah is to talk to Ahaz, who was an evil king ruling the kingdom of Judah. And Ahaz is presented with a problem. There's 2 smaller northern kingdoms that are preparing for attack, and Isaiah is here giving him counsel. And part of that counsel is just encouraging him that God's in control, that this will not happen unless your faith is firm. I cannot make you stand firm. So that's a New Living Translation of those same verses where God's saying, if you don't have faith, I can't give it to you, right? You have to believe, you have to have the faith that I will bring you through this, that I am the God in control. The message says it's like this: if you don't take your stand in faith, you won't have a leg to stand on. So that's the dilemma before Ahaz. Is he putting his faith in the living God? Is he putting his faith in Jehovah God, the God of the Bible? Or is he putting his faith in something else? In the very next few passages, he's kind of tested on that. The Lord spoke to Ahaz and said, "Ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether it is in the deep steps or in the highest heights." But Ahaz would not ask. And he tried to play it off that he didn't want to test God. But God asks you to do something, and you say, "No, God, I'm not going to do that." You don't have faith in God, right? And Ahaz just proved in the very next verses that he didn't have faith. I believe this is the same Ahaz that earlier maybe in Kings we're told about he sacrificed one of his sons to another god, right? So Ahaz is not a good king. He's an evil king, and he doesn't stand firm in his faith to the Lord. And then we know what happens after that, right? The kingdom of Judah is going to be exiled. It's going to be destroyed. And just simply right here, what would have changed in that if Ahaz had faith and stood firm and trusted God and followed through. So as we're praying today, again, let's think about those leaders that we're praying for, and let's just pray that they will take a bold stand for righteousness. Let's pray that about ourselves, right? How can I ask Joe Biden or Donald Trump to take a bold stand for righteousness if I'm not? So I encourage each and every one of us to pray that God will help us to take an appropriate stand for righteousness, even when it's not popular, and that He will also encourage or enable our politicians during this time. Maybe tonight's debate we can see some of that. Who's going to take the bold stand and stand on biblical principles? Does that play out in the debate tonight? So again, this is day 9. I hope you're enjoying this series. Look forward to seeing you back tomorrow on day 10. This has been a Land Chart for Christ production. The PDF of 21 Days of Prayer and Fasting was brought to you by Bellevue Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee.